Hi, everybody. Royce Eddings here, podcaster Royce in the house. Thank you for joining the show, our live podcast tonight. Co-host here, Lou Mars. We'll have another co-host joining us when he can. But in particular, the show tonight is about Bruce Howard, a very impressive accomplishments. I'm sorry. Bruce has put on the San Luis or Avila Beach Blues Festival for the last 27 years. And he's put concerts on all over the place. The Arlington Theater down in Santa Barbara, the theater in San Luis Obispo. Bruce, where all of you put concerts on?
Oh man, I'm way too old to remember all that. No, my farthest north was Eureka. My farthest west was Hawaii. I did a bunch of shows in Hawaii.
Oh, and nice.
My farthest south was Santa Barbara.
Right. But you've been a real constant at the Avila Beach Blues Festival, like 27 years now, right? I mean,
I created it, and I'm the lead pony, win or lose. I'm the lead pony on that.
Right. I'm really looking forward to it this year. You got George Thorogood, War, and some other people. I've been there several times. I love that festival.
Tommy Castro is
Tommy Castro, and what a beautiful venue. So anyway, I just want to mention. Hey, Daddy Bog, how you doing, buddy? Good evening. I just want to mention that Bruce and I met. He was friends with a jazz musician, and I was building that jazz musician's custom home, and that's how we met. And I had already heard of you, producing concerts and stuff. But the guy's name was Chuck Greenberg. He was in a band called Shadowfax. And he gave me three. They won the Grammy right around that time. They were Grammy winners, and so that's how Bruce and I met, was through Chuck Greenberg, Shadowfax. And Chuck kind of produced the music too. He wasn't just in the band. He took all the recordings home and he mixed it all, and decided who was going to be in there, how much, which sometimes got him in trouble with the other band members. But I built a studio for him. After the house was built, we allowed a space underneath it. It was a steep lot. You remember that?
I do indeed.
And we had cleared an area out underneath it, underneath the first floor's floor. And as soon as the final inspection was over with, we bootlegged in his studio down below. and that's where he mixed all this stuff, in that studio down below.
Yeah, he says that online. I love it.
So anyway, Bruce, why don't we go back and maybe start like, where did you grow up at?
So yeah, it's a very sad story, you guys. And Lars, you're a drummer, right?
I am, yes.
Okay,
I'm a multi-instrumentalist, but I'm known mostly for my drumming.
For traps or for percussion?
For I call it drumming, drum set. I'm not a percussionist, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually do the set.
So I started, you may not know this, so I started as a really, is it okay to swear on this podcast?
Fucking no.
I started as a really shitty drummer, but have you ever heard of Jim Chapin?
Yeah.
I studied with Jim Chapin.
No way.
I hitchhiked across Canada. He invented modern jazz drumming. He wrote a book called Advanced Technique for the Modern Jazz Drummer. And I got to I hitchhiked across Canada and lived in Manhattan and got to study under Jim Chapin.
Wow.
Oh, that's amazing.
I didn't know you were a drummer.
He invented left-handed independence,
wow.
Which is when you're doing a ride in a jazz tune, you're doing a ride with your right hand or left hand, depending if you're right-handed or left-handed, and you do independent stuff with your left hand. So you could do the horn section if you want. You're going dun 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 dun.
Rips.
Well, and maybe your left hand is doing what the horn section is doing, which is da 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 da. So it's all independent. So Jim started.
Don't get me fired up.
And his son actually is Harry Chapin, who passed away. Harry Chapin was of some repute.
I heard that name. I didn't put it together.
Jim had he started as, he was an older guy. I'm old now, but he was old then. He's long gone.
Yeah.
During the war, they did war bond drives, Second World War this is, and they would play for like 12 hours in a row.
No shit. Wow.
So he was in a band that had 2 drummers, and they would communicate with each other via Morse code with their left hand.
Oh, I see where you're going.
So
That's
they would say,
amazing.
you know, check out the chick in the front row, you know.
I totally knew
funny.
you were going there.
So
do you play other instruments as well, or is the drums your main thing, like myself?
drums is what I've always played. I was never good though. I just always, I studied and I loved every bit of it. So when I got my drum set stolen a bunch of years ago, and I became a flight attendant. I didn't tell you this, Royce.
Okay.
So it was with an airline that was a charter. So, you know, we went to Angola during the revolution, and, you know, went to air bases in Southeast Asia and all kinds of stuff. But I used to bring back percussion instruments because I was into it.
Yeah.
And Lars, you'll dig this. In 1978-ish, maybe 77,
Yeah.
I went to a little shop in Hong Kong, and they had lion cymbals.
Dude, I was raised in the Philippine Islands, so I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been to the Philippines. I used to go to
Not too
Clark
many
Air
people
Base.
know what you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
We'll explain that later.
Okay, so lion cymbals were Chinese hand cymbals, and all I did was take them apart, so they were single, turn them upside down, drill the hole, and put them on a drum kit.
Bird of Wong, yes.
And that created the China cymbals that every kit has now.
Yeah.
I was the guy 100,000 years ago that created that. I was the first guy into the Wuhan factory. In 1980, I went to central China and went to the factory that makes them. My claim to fame, I invented the Chinese symbol that everybody, China boys.
Yeah, I had them. Yeah.
Everybody had them. They were great.
That was it.
Yeah.
Put them up, up back, in the 80s, you lined them up like this. Later we did them, upside down, side by side. You do the, Yeah, they don't use them as much now, but man, were they a sound and so much music, a very specific.
It's true. That was so.
That's a badass story.
So I went to the NAMM show. First, I also sold the gong to the Gong Show, but that's another story.
Bruce, we got to go get coffee.
So I went. I used to go to
talk to my people. We'll work this out.
Absolutely. I go to NAMM shows because I was trying to introduce people to this stuff. Armin Zildjian came up to me at one and said, "These things sound like shit. They sound like trash can lids. No one's ever going to buy these." Well,
Sabian.
And Zildjian, both of them.
Well, Sabian was my sponsor, and I know they picked them up. So
5 years later, they were both manufacturing those.
Yes, Sabian was all over those because I was out there, NAMM the last couple of years on that. So before COVID. Wow, I'll be go to hell. Those are great. Those are great. Sorry. Can we go into It's a Small World?
and Brazilian. So I used to go to Rio and Sao Paulo. So I would get Brazilian stuff. I was the largest importer of Brazilian percussion also. In fact,
the Sabian is the boys from Zildjian, right?
Yeah. Well, it was Bob.
That's his offspring who got kind of mad at Dad.
It was Bob. They split up, and Bob went to
because of
Canada.
shit like that turning you down.
Correct. I was at a NAMM show.
Now, Bruce, this is what you described in your bio as your start in the music industry in Santa Cruz, right?
I was living in Santa Cruz. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because you were talking about importing the Chinese and Brazilian.
Correct. I was the largest importer of Chinese and Brazilian percussion instruments.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
So one story though, I was at a NAMM show and an old guy came up to me. I was featuring a berimbau. If you guys have ever heard of a berimbau, it looks like a Brazilian bow and arrow kind of with a gourd, and it's played with a lot of Brazilian instruments, but it's capoeira, the martial art, is is basically that. So an old man came up and I was showing him how to do stuff. He was fascinated with it, and he stayed at my booth for, I don't know, whatever it was, 15 minutes, whatever it was, and he left. And Ronnie Powell was a friend of mine. Ronnie was with Sergio Mendes and a bunch of different bands. He came up and he said, how do you know him? And I said, I don't know. It's just some guy came up and talked to me. He said, you know who he is? And I said, no. He said, his name is Leo Fender. I was like, okay.
Only at NAM.
NAM shows, baby. NAM shows.
Wow.
Have they
Only
not
at NAM
become,
shows, yeah.
Bruce, you know, I know you've been going to them for years, probably like I have. And I got to say, the last couple, they were always overwhelming for me. And I don't get overwhelmed, but, you know, the sound, the size. But lately, they've gotten so big. I mean, it's 6 floors of the entire, the hotels all the way around. There's so much stuff going on. It's impossible in the private parties on the side, you know, with all the sponsors. It's incredible. And I got to tell you, I like to go on Thursday and Friday when the real businesses, I hate to say it this way, it's going to come out wrong, but the real businesses and the real musicians show up. The weekend is all, I don't know, it's like it gets weird. But Thursday and Friday, for the people out there, if you really want to meet the people like Bruce and you really want to talk business and you really are about trading and getting sponsorships, that's when you go. Now, if you want to just showcase and you want to walk around and look like you're somebody, go on Saturday and Sunday.
Well, it's a party. I mean, it's a great, I mean, one of my greatest memories, Lars, I haven't been to one in 30 years. It's been a long time. But when Tama first came out, because that was a brand new thing, and Billy Cobham was their main sponsor. And Billy was in a booth that was about as big as whatever room you're sitting in.
I had Billy Cobham's Octobons that he first made.
Right on.
His first set of Octobons I had played in the 80s when I was touring in the 80s. I was playing on Billy Cobham's Octobons. All of them. Well, no Tama label yet.
Yeah, there was no Tama yet.
No, Billy Cobham invented those bad boys. He came
unbelievable
stuff.
I
have them. I got the picture. I sold them a few years ago. Yeah, you're killing me. You're killing me. It's become a drum. We're going to be on Modern Drummer. We should have called Modern Drummer in on this.
Well, I got my article still from when I went to China in 1980. I wrote an article for Modern Drummer.
Sweet. Hey, look who's
Hello, Dan.
Hey.
Dan, this is Bruce Howard.
Hey,
Bruce Howard, this is Dan McNew.
Nice to meet you, Bruce.
Nice to meet you, Dan.
Dan comes on and co-hosts with us as well. But anyway, so yeah, Bruce is kind of, we're taking it from the beginning, and he's in his drum importing era.
Oh, right.
Dan, I must say you have like a super professional background. I'm very envious of your background.
Yeah, the only thing it comes with a lot of problems too. That's why I was a little late getting on.
Because you're working with musicians, Dan.
Well, I'm telling you, you're looking good, man. You're looking good. So
yes, he is always.
So I went from there. I was selling to the biggest drum store in North America called Frank's Drum Shop in Chicago. I sold all over. I was selling. I was an importer, so I was distributing throughout the United States. And I went out to meet with Marty LaShawn. His dad owned it. His dad bought it from Frank, I think, in 1938. But this was a shop you would go in there and it'd be, Carmen Apiece would be there, and you name it.
That before.
Pardon me?
Oh no, I've just where have we heard that before? We were just talking about him on the last show.
Carmen on the last show.
Yeah.
I used to run into him in the 80s.
Frank's Drum Shop was the place to be, and I met Marty, who was the son who ended up buying it from his dad. And Marty, I'm not saying that people in the music business tend to party, but we did stay up late a few times. And Marty took me to a club with some friends of his, and it was Shadowfax. So I got to meet the Shadowfax guys, and short story, even longer. I was living in Santa Cruz. I met Chuck, got to like Chuck. I invested in a couple of their first albums. One of them got a Grammy. He came to Santa Cruz and said, they used to stay at my house because they had no money. Touring in those days for an entry-level band was, you sleep on people's floors. Not unlike what it is today, actually.
No, you're in the van now.
Correct. In the van, correct.
There are no hotels. You get the hotel now. Although I will say something about North State up here for you people in California. The casinos, for you bands listening, are throwing in rooms on these casino gigs. Really well put. I applaud that. It really helps. It's nice to see that. Yeah. Because it's nice to have, even if you've got a rig, it's nice to get your feet on the ground and get in a shower. I got to tell you.
Get a shower, man. Yeah.
Those showers, and food are the most valuable things for a musician on the road. Something that's not catered, especially if it's like, now, if you play Salem, Oregon, anybody knows this, the ladies come out there, they're known for their pies, and they bring them to the green room. You get homemade pies. And you go there just to play for the pies almost. What, that damn pie? Forget the pie.
I'll say this. I'll say this not only for Dan's benefit, but some of the new people that join us in the chat. Bruce Howard, producer, promoter, who's our guest tonight, was just talking about how he had met Chuck Greenberg of Shadowfax. Well, the way Bruce and I met 35 years ago or more was I was building a custom home for Chuck Greenberg of Shadowfax, and Bruce was his friend, and that's when we met. And okay, go ahead, Bruce. You got the floor.
So no, it's all of us together. So the
Right.
Chuck was coming through Santa Cruz, and they used to stay at my house, and he said, you know, we don't have anybody to promote us in Santa Cruz. You should promote us. And I said, sure. What does that mean? and Chuck was a super good businessman. He put together, he was on Windham Hill. He was the first non-acoustic band on Windham Hill. And he put together all the paperwork for the recordings, for the contracts with the label. He did his own management. He taught me more about the industry than any single person since then. He was a great player, played Lyricon, which was a synthesized saxophone, but a great reed player, great composer, and a great businessman, all of the above.
Yeah, he was, and just the nicest guy you ever met, too.
Nicest guy you've ever met. Yeah. We had
Royce. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Bruce.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Royce is going to appreciate that you and I, Bruce, are both wearing local vinyl record shops. I got the Chico one on. I saw you got Boo Records, which is a great store. A shout out. Both of these stores support local and original music too for their areas.
Right.
Plug for those guys. They deserve that because without
they
that,
deserve that. Yeah.
Be able to make a buck, you know.
So the record stores that still sell actual records, and the radio stations that are still allowed to let their DJs play a song that might not be the top 40 song in the US, and the musicians that are grinding it out, we have to support live music. We have to support live music and and local musicians. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
And I want to jump on that real quick, Bruce, because here's what I'm seeing right now. Now, first off, kudos. Royce was shooting some video last week. I saw it, Alice Cooper. I love Alice Cooper, first off. One of my favorite. What a great performer. But here's what bothered me. Vino Robles has finally stopped saying, hey, you got to wear a mask. You don't have to show your vaccination card. And I didn't see enough people out there. I think the people, you got to come back out. You got to get back out here. Don't be afraid. Get back out here and support these bands. Guys like Bruce set us up. Promoters like him. Royce is supporting us. God, you got Dan over here, you know. But without the people, it's worthless. The people have got to come back out.
Bruce, you know, I think here in Texas, you know, we've got a jump start on everything. I mean, the concerts are full now. I mean, they're selling out. So we're doing very, very well in Texas.
But saw a festival like that.
Yeah, but Lou's right about the concert I was at, you know, Ace Frehley, and then of course the headliner being Alice Cooper. I had a really good seat anyway, you know, but I could have left my seat and got even a much better one, and half the row I was sitting on, which was you know, a fairly expensive row to be sitting in, half that row was empty. I could have moved down and been more center of stage. Where I was sitting at the drummer was blocked a little bit, but anyway, but yeah, there were a lot of open seats.
I think we need to. Well, so here's a question to Bruce. So I'm going to throw something at you, Bruce, and put you on the spot on this one, man. So what Royce just said about these empty seats, and Dan, so Texas got no problem, but California does right now. What do you say on how we can solve this to motivate these people in California, who are one of the most skittish states, in my opinion, during this bit? I went all over the country. I was at Sturgis, where people were shoulder to shoulder. Shoulder.
Yeah, right.
How are we gonna? What is your advice on how we would do this? What could they have done to make that better at Vino Robles, in your opinion?
Well, I don't want to talk about any specific venue.
Okay, I'll move it.
Especially, they're my competition. I mean, it's a great venue. I go there all the time. I love Vina. It's a great venue. But they're like, so
let's call it Venue X.
Well, people come out if there's music that they want to see.
Yeah.
Period.
Now, what do we do though with those? Now, could we, if there's tickets like this to get people going, what if we gave them away to certain organizations to fill those seats? Is that a no-no? Or you see that as a positive?
So what you can't do, what Vina did the first year, because Live Nation booked them the first year.
Yeah.
And what Vina did was, if they didn't sell out, they would do discounted tickets. But what that means is,
don't buy. Yeah.
Well, no, I paid $85 for a ticket, and the guy next to me paid $25.
And you're pissed off about that.
And you teach your people not to buy tickets in advance. Right. So it is a business.
How do we get these people back out again?
They're coming, man. They're coming. Last year at AVILA, almost every show we did, the only show that didn't sell out was Gary Clark Jr. Which is the weirdest thing in the world, because that was my favorite act all year.
Yeah, really.
Picking up on what Lou said, when I bought the tickets, they said, either a current test or your vaccination card. Well, I've got my vaccination card. I wasn't worried about it. 3 days before the concert, they said we had to wear masks. And when we got there, that wasn't the case. So I just wonder if that had an impact, because, the North County, we don't like masks and all that, all the rules. It's a little more redneck and probably a lot more like Texas, which is unique for California,
I agree with you, Royce. No, because my sister and her husband had tickets to Doobie Brothers, and they were told they were going to have to be tested. They didn't want to involve a medical situation with their love for the arts. So they already had bought the tickets and they didn't go. So they had the tickets and they didn't go because they didn't want to deal with that.
Didn't want to deal with that.
So that's fading right now, but that could be still happening. California, I mean,
well, you guys, I want to put in a good word for the healthcare people, and it trickles down. So we're talking about something that didn't exist in the universe 3 years ago.
True.
And then everybody's pissed off saying, well, they're all saying different things and they're changing their mind. We had no fucking clue what this was. No one knew what it was. And they're trying to figure it out. And I mean, you talk to two doctors, if your side aches and you go to the doctor, you're going to have one guy to say you're cool, don't drink so much. And the other guy's going to say your appendix are bad.
Mm-hmm.
We do the best we can. We're like auto mechanics. We're trying to figure out what that ping is when you turn your car on. And we expect them to walk on water. We expect them to know everything, like there's a book they can open. And it's the same with the promoters. We have no friggin' clue. So all we knew what to do was go by what the county tells us. Right. What else can we do?
Well, it was complicated because every state had their own rules.
Correct.
Some states, there was no rules.
Well, in our county was different than the state.
Yeah.
It
was,
but
right now,
But
right now, everything is.
You don't need anything. We have the Fremont. We have the Fremont Theater in downtown SLO too, and we strongly recommend masks because it's indoors, but it's not required, and vaccination record is not required.
So there's no reason other than fear right now for somebody to not go. Was that a fair statement?
Well, if you like,
the medical industry has now said it's okay to go.
Yes. So let me take off for just a sec. So. The way sound travels, I'm going to get esoteric here. Sound travels in waves, which means one air molecule hits the other air molecule, hits the other one, and they come to your ears. And depending on what the note is, the vibrations of the molecules are different. When the molecules hit your ear, these are air molecules hitting your ear, for some reason, it creates emotions in humans. We don't know why. Why is that? What makes a song? Why is a minor sound sad? Why do those notes sound sad to us?
Yeah.
And why do major notes sound powerful to us? No one knows.
Right.
But we do know that it's good and it makes us feel good. And if you want to feel good and you want to support people that are making you feel good,
there you go.
Go to music. Go to see live music.
Hey, Bruce, I want to give a shout out real quick to our good friend in the chat, Gloria. We were talking about the medical workers, and she said, "Thank you, Bruce. I'm a healthcare worker."
Yes. Yeah, right on, Gloria. Thank you for your service, Gloria. Thank you.
That. Yeah, she's a hardworking girl too.
I think the public expects people to, like, there's a book that gives all the answers, and if you're a healthcare worker, you should have that book. And if you're not giving us the right answers, it's because you're bad in some ways. I want to tell people there is no book. We're all learning this as we go, including the healthcare workers. They didn't know what hit them. They had no clue what this thing was in the beginning.
Right.
Nor how to treat it. We did. It's like I was a flight attendant when AIDS hit. People were dying all over the place, and no one even knew what it was. We didn't even know what it was.
and they responded about the same way in the first year.
They screwed up.
They totally screwed up.
They screwed up.
The good news is that's past us now. So hopefully, if it doesn't come back up this winter, and I'm not trying to bash the medical industry in any way, I am trying to support the entertainment industry, which got bashed in return very badly for 2 years.
A lot of industries did, but entertainment in particular. But think about China right now. There's millions of people on lockdown that can't even leave their apartments.
Which is why we can't get supplies. There's a lot of music gear at the stores now. We can't get gear.
100%.
So it's still going on. But the good news is, or at least what I like to see is on the positive side, is that the shows are back. A lot of bands are out right now. The good news, Bruce is here. Bruce is here. If Bruce wouldn't be here if we couldn't have live shows right now. So thank God we're back at least at that level.
We closed we got the lease on the Fremont, and 2 years later we had to close the Fremont for 2 years.
Oh man.
And
how did you survive? How did you survive?
I have 6 other partners, and we all went into our piggy banks to keep the thing afloat.
How many people did we lose? Restaurants and businesses like yourself. So I'm so happy that you somehow dog paddled through that. God bless you.
But we survived.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all here, right? We survived. I lost 2. I lost a cousin's husband, and I lost a really good friend that we do. My wife and I do polio eradication overseas. Yeah. So we go to northern India, northern Nigeria to do this polio stuff. We give drops, polio drops. The idea that the polio vaccine took 150 years to develop. The COVID vaccine took a year.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And after all the saving of lives and misery with half a dozen other vaccines, no one wanted to get vaccinated for a while.
And a shout out to the highest.
Vaccination became a bad word for a lot of people.
Correct.
A shout out, especially since we just lost Naomi, to the highest suicide rate we ever had in the history of musicians in the last 2 years during this period.
It was
Naomi,
bleak.
we just lost another one. Japan, highest suicide rates in their history in 1 month for the whole year.
It was bleak.
Yeah.
It was bleak. No, it was bleak.
Yeah, it's very bleak. There was a lot of bad news in the last couple of years, but I think 2022 is a year of new beginnings. I think that's going to be the difference, new beginnings, and that's the theme I hope we go with.
Stagecoach is going on. Stagecoach is going on as we speak.
Yeah.
It's the largest. It's the largest country music festival, as far as I know, on the planet, and it's going on as we speak.
Coachella just occurred, correct, Bruce?
Coachella just happened. They do them back to back. It's the same people. It's Golden Voice, AEG.
That's massive. There wasn't a whole lot of press about it this year.
They don't need it, man. They sell tickets without it. No, it's true. They sell tickets.
No red carpet.
Yeah,
there's a reason for that. But yeah, it's Coachella. They sell out. Well, Bruce, back to you, Roy. Sorry, I intercepted there. I took us.
No, back to Bruce. we want to hear the steps leading up to
Okay, so Chuck said, "Would you promote me?" I did Shadowfax at the Sunroom in Santa Cruz at the boardwalk. The Sunroom in Santa Cruz is a room on the second. It's on the beach. It's a second story, and it's got a glass ceiling. So my buddies were on stage. The ceiling opened. It was a starry night, and I lost money and fell in love with a profession.
Sounds starting.
And
Sounds like
a great place to do it.
And that was, I don't know, that was probably 35, 36 years ago, something like that. And I've been doing it. I came here to do shows in San Luis Obispo. We actually did a show. The guy who created our business was a guy named Bill Graham.
Oh yeah.
Never heard of him.
I actually got to work with him a little bit.
Wonderland.
Got to meet him a couple of times. Because some of my endorsees, Lars, Mickey Hart from The Dead was an endorsee. Airto Moriero was an endorsee. Luis Conte was an endorsee. Some of these guys. So I got to know them through the percussion and drum players. And I got to meet Bill Graham. He let me see where I was going with that.
He was at Winterland and the Fillmore.
Winterland and the Fillmore, Day on the Green.
Yeah, Oakland Day on the Green. That's right.
If you have any interest in the live music business, his autobiography, because he said 50 years ago that rock and roll will reach a point where the artists will be playing in stadiums, and everyone kicked him in the head. They thought that was the stupidest thing they'd ever heard of before. He was a visionary about the business too, because it's not viable if there's not a business attached to it. You know, you could love the music, but unless you can, pay your rent, you got to do something to pay the rent too.
You got to eat.
You got to eat, man.
Yeah.
You got to eat. And he understood
I love
that.
it. Starving artist is a true term, and unfortunately, people always, hey, will you play this or will you play that? Can you imagine asking your dentist, would you like to come over and work on my teeth? It'll, for exposure.
Yeah, wouldn't it be a blast? Wouldn't you love it, man? You could just kind of hang out and do my teeth.
You're a caterer. I have a party. Come over and cook food.
Correct.
Okay, I'll tell everyone about you. You're awesome.
Correct.
Yeah, I know. It's unbelievable.
So the first show I did in San Luis Obispo was a reggae band, the Twinkle Brothers, at the Spirit. We did a benefit for African famine relief 1,000,000 years ago. And I met the guy that put K-Otter on the air. He put it on the air in 1984, and I bought it in 1986 and bought a couple of other radio stations and ran 3 radio stations for 20 years. I sold them 20 years ago, long time. But the whole time, because it was K-Otter, I named my promotion business Otter Productions.
I was going to say, I see where that's going.
That's how that, and then I've been doing shows ever since, and did the Performing Arts Center when it opened. We've done, Winona, Faith Hill, Tony Bennett, Pretenders, all at the Performing Arts Center. AVILA, we've done, Jack Johnson and Sheryl Crow and John Party and Willie Nelson and Social D. And
Bruce, I'm going to pop a couple of pictures up just for a minute. Okay. Most of these pictures, not all of them, are from the Avila Beach Blues Festival. This is this year's, this May 29th. We've got George Thorogood, War, Tommy Castro, and the Painkillers. So that's going to be fun. I'm definitely going to be there. Now, this is a show I saw also. Let's see. I saw this at the Arlington Theater and in Avila Beach. And it was a tribute to Hendrix. And it was, you see the lineup here. Even Billy Cox was there. But the lineup was, Buddy Guy, Zakk Wylde, Johnny Land, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Eric Johnson. I mean, some of the most premier guitar players in the world right now. They all got together and took turns playing Jimi Hendrix songs, and then they would come out in groups and play JimiHendrix songs.
It was killer.
I told people for a long time afterward that was my favorite concert. I told people for a long time afterwards.
That's good stuff.
Okay, then this was an Avila Beach Resort, Avila Beach Blues Festival poster here. Elvin Bishop Band, Steve Miller Band, Carolyn Wonderland. I'll show another one, then we'll kind of move on here, and we'll come back. I have more pictures. Greg Allman, trombone shorty.
He's
John Mayall, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
So these are all coming up for the people looking. If they're not,
No,
they're not.
these are all past shows.
These are
Oh, I
past
thought these were
shows.
coming
Yeah.
up. I saw May 25th.
Okay.
I thought that one was coming up.
I'll show more after a while.
Yeah. Do we have any to promote that are coming up?
Lars,
Well,
I'm
yeah,
glad you
yeah.
asked.
Well,
The first one, yeah.
right here, the first.
That's
Lou, this is this month, May 29th.
Okay, well, that's what I thought at the beginning, and then all of a sudden you
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
last one.
Yeah.
I was
This
a
is-
drum tech for War for a while.
Great band.
Oh, really?
Those
Killer
guys are
band.
badass, yeah.
I saw
Killer
War.
band.
I saw War in 1977 with an up and coming Billy Joel.
Oh,
Wow.
There was actually 5 groups. It was War, Michael Murphy, Rusty Weir, and Billy Joel.
I hate you, Dad.
Wow.
I had to stay. I had to stay outside of a stereo store all night long to get free tickets for that one.
Oh man.
You know, I saw War too, but it was around, I don't know, 70, 71, maybe 72.
Wow.
And it was in a theater in Las Vegas at one of the casinos. And you talk about war, fights kept breaking out in there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Those guys are great. I've spent a lot of time in the green room with those boys. They're awesome. I got an interesting question, I think, for Bruce, because he brought up Bill Graham. So I got to ask him this. And if you don't want to answer this, Bruce, I understand. But Led Zeppelin, Day on the Green, Saturday. His son, Bill Graham's son, goes into the green room and gets supposedly or allegedly beat up by John Bonham and also Peter Grant.
Read the
What is
book,
your-
dude. Read the
what do you-
book.
Yeah, what is the real deal on
It
that?
was one of the security guards. I forget the manager. I should know the manager because he's the most
I'm just
influential.
repeating what the Chronicle said the next day.
His son, the manager's son, was taking the names off of the trailers to collect them, but during the show, and one of the security guys stopped them from doing that, and they called him into the Zeppelin trailer, and had pipes, and beat him almost to death.
Wow. I
And
never heard that. Yeah, the Chronicle reported was Peter and John. But
Read
it
the
wasn't,
book.
What you're saying?
Read the book is Graham
What's
goes over that. It's Bill
it
Bill Graham's autobiography.
And he talks about that in the book. I didn't know that. That's awesome information, especially for Led Zeppelin fans.
Well,
Wow.
I mean, they were shitty. I mean, it was the greatest band in the world, but they were shit. I mean, they beat the crap out of this guy
I
for
was at
doing
the
his
show.
job.
I
Oh,
was
you
at
were
the
there.
show.
Oh, wow.
I was there, and Led Zeppelin did not come on for an hour late. And we're all sitting there going, what's going on? And the first thing Robert Plant said as he came out, he said, I want to thank Bill Graham for allowing us to come out. And then we read in the paper the next day what had happened. They had said somewhat of what you said. And then Led Zeppelin was refusing to come out unless Bill Graham would not press charges, is what was being put in the paper the next day. So that's why I was curious as a promoter of what happened there. What a tough spot for, and what a terrible
Huge.
thing.
So
all the way around.
it's a lose-lose for a promoter, because what they should have done was brought the police in and arrested them on the spot. But then they'd have 20,000 people rioting because Led Zeppelin didn't go on.
Right,
So
yeah,
how
it
do
was a
you
sold-out show.
how do you juxtapose those two things?
Well, Led Zeppelin played the next day, Sunday as well. I was at Saturday. That happened Saturday, and then they stopped the tour after that. They never played America again after that. They
Well, I
went
think
to
they
Europe. They canceled it.
They got arrested, I think, at the airport. I think
Did they?
that part I'm unclear about. I don't remember in the book. I think
Good
the
stuff. I
Graham,
love this.
he had the power. I mean, he was a powerful guy. And
He was,
they almost murdered his security guy. I mean, they beat him really badly.
yeah, they said it was bad in the paper. I didn't
It was
realize
bad.
it was that bad, but you could tell it was serious.
It was
I appreciate
serious.
you commenting on that.
Yeah, and I want to make really clear to everybody, including your viewers, that anything I say now can't be held against me and may or may not be true.
Thrills for you.
Love it.
You know, well, somebody wrote a book about Zeppelin once, and I can't remember who it was, but there's some wild stories that happened in those hotel rooms with them.
Big
Yeah.
time.
The one that stands out in my mind, they had a groupie back there, and there was a red snapper involved.
Correct. I know the story. I know the
No.
story.
The fish. And a woman.
Oh,
And don't forget the plaster casters. The plaster casters were not just with Led Zeppelin, but we're getting off track.
No.
Love rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Rock and roll.
Okay, well, part of rock and roll is the attitude. I was just watching videos about Alice in Chains today, remembering those guys, and I was in the studio with them in Colorado, and they were doing some stuff at the Alley. It is attitude, and it must. I'm curious, Bruce. Have you had it? Is it tough to deal with the attitude of some of these bands sometimes, or what is it like nowadays?
Well, most of what you do as a promoter is you deal with crew. Tour manager, production manager.
Okay.
The artists usually. So when I do a show at AVILA, let's say it's a show that we have gates at 5 o'clock and the show downbeats at 6 o'clock. I'll be there at 6 a.m. because we got trucks rolling in at 6 a.m. We put up the stage the night before. We have all the trusses ready. The trucks roll in. We drop the trusses, start loading it up, doing the LED screen in the back. The artists don't roll in until 3 o'clock or something like that. So most of what I deal with are crews, and they're good crews and they're not good crews, and it's not always that the nice ones are the professional ones. And it's not always that the professional ones are the nice ones.
Are you having trouble, like a lot of these companies nowadays, finding help?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I hear a lot of them. A lot of people like yourself. It's just hard to find people who want to work or work hard right now.
I actually support the working man, and the fact that people get more money now when they were getting $12 an hour or $10 an hour 2 years ago, and now everybody's griping because they have to give them 16 or 17 or 18. I mean, it's no offense, but open your fucking wallet. These people are working for you. I mean, seriously.
Well, shit's expensive right now. Food is up, gas is up.
Correct.
Correct.
I support.
I never had a problem with getting the minimum wage up. I can remember when it would come up and there would be a conversation, say on Facebook about it. Everybody was complaining hamburgers were going to cost $15 a piece, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, they have gone up, but they're not $15.
Not about 8 or 9.
Yeah, no. And I support giving everybody a living wage, whatever that is.
Yes.
Yeah. Years ago, I worked as carpenters with a guy from Germany, and he married an American exchange student and moved over here. And we're sitting there eating lunch, and I mean, he was pretty much living in poverty. They weren't paying him very much. And he goes, Royce, he goes, over in Germany, yeah, we have a range, but let's just say it's from 14 to 20, not from 3 to 20 like it is here.
Yeah,
and I think they were paying him $3 an hour. I mean, it was in the late 70s, but that was a very low wage in the late 70s. Yeah. I mean, I never worked, for that amount. But anyway, so I felt kind of bad for him. And they had goats, and they would make their own cheese, and his wife would make the best bread I've ever eaten, this dark yeasty bread, and sell us loaves for 50 cents. But anyway, enough of that crap. Let's get back to music.
I love you, Roy.
I support bringing the wage up and get it all a little bit closer. There shouldn't be like 1% has all the money and everybody else is working 2 jobs.
I think the
I can't get this camera thing.
I think the working class. And I'm a capitalist. I'm a concert promoter, but I think the working class has been shit on for a lot of years, and I think right now people are saying, I ain't doing it anymore. You have to pay me, or I'm going to go get another job. And I support that. Right. I think that's a good thing.
I support that too. You got to fight for your rights. I mean,
correct.
There was a time in this country when 10-year-old kids were working 16 hours a day.
100%.
And corporations to stop doing that, they had to pass legislation to get them to stop doing it.
Correct.
So Bruce, what's your response to and I'm being devil's advocate, so don't shoot the messenger.
No, please.
What's your response to the high ticket prices right now for watching a show?
I'm glad you asked that. So what's the guy's name? What's the manager of Zeppelin? Peter, what's his name?
Peter Grant. Yeah, Peter Grant it was.
Peter Grant.
So he's the one who changed the industry, because it used to be that you would pay, a band would be coming, Hendrix, high end, Hendrix would get $100,000. But a show might gross $2 million.
Right.
And the promoter kept that.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin changed it because Led Zeppelin came and said, we need a guarantee, but we're also going to get a percentage of your profit. So a normal deal today is whatever the guarantee is versus 85 or 90% of the profit.
Yeah.
So they restrict me to 10 or 15% of the profit, not expenses, just the profit. So when you see when the tickets are $50, that's because the band is getting paid accordingly. When the tickets, I mean, no offense, but there are venues in our town that the front row tickets go for $1,500.
Jeez.
When they go for $1,500, it's like the Stones. If you look at the Stones, look at Springsteen will go on tour and he'll charge $100 for a ticket. The Stones go on tour and they'll charge $1,500 for a ticket. The promoter is not making that money. The band dictates that, not local bands. At the local level, no, that doesn't happen. At the higher end touring level,
Yeah.
If the tickets are expensive, it's because the band demanded that to be.
That makes sense.
The band tells me what I can charge for tickets.
Yeah.
I can't.
Well, my understanding was years in the past anyway, before everybody was downloading the music and not paying for it, the bands would go on tour to promote their latest album because that's
100%.
And now they go on tour because that's where the money is.
It's where the money is.
100%.
The opposite. Yeah.
The first thing a band does now that's starting to break is they sell their stuff. If you saw, what was it? Black Keys were on every single commercial on TV before they perform live. You were hearing all the, for Chrysler or whatever, you'd hear the Black Keys. So they peddle that. The start for a band now is breaking into that genre where they can make money. Then you start doing your releases, but you're right, Royce, you don't make any money on your releases anymore.
No.
Then you tour on it. So the money for a band is, movies, commercials, live performances, and believe it or not, t-shirts. Bands make a lot of money on t-shirts.
Yeah. That's the difference you can tell between local bands and national acts. Local bands t-shirts are $25. National acts are $50.
Correct.
Oh yeah. Alice Cooper t-shirts were $50.
Oh my God.
I went on my phone while I was standing there looking at them, and I could buy this exact same t-shirt for $22.
Wow.
So if you go on Joe Bonamassa's website, and I have nothing but respect for him, one of the best guitar players out right now.
Yeah.
But he's got Joe Bonamassa friggin' golf balls for sale. He's got Joe Bonamassa dog leashes for sale.
Oh my God!
I just made those up, by the way. I don't know if it was or not. But
I feel better now. I feel better
now. When it comes to the merchandising, that's all the band's money. I mean, that's for the band, right? I mean, promoters, nothing. They don't get any of that. It's all.
Well, they sub it out.
Right.
It's a licensing deal. They sub it out to a company that does. I mean, Bonamassa ain't cranking out golf balls in his back room. He licenses it out, but he gets he gets a chunk of the license.
Okay.
Unless there's bootlegs, and which is another thing where Peter Grant showed in The Song Remains the Same. Speaking of Led Zeppelin, when he's yelling at the promoter on screen about T-shirts that aren't there as being sold, but that's you can only control so much. I think a lot of pressure is put on these promoters that they, in that particular scene, I felt too much pressure. I felt the Bill Graham thing was terrible. That's just Led Zeppelin. I actually have had nothing but positive experiences with promoters in my career. And I've been very blessed with promoters that actually went above and beyond to actually help my career. So I think they're a lot like you, Bruce. I can just tell by the way, I've not worked with you before, but I can tell with your love, your passion, and where your background, that you're one of the latter of the type that you want to see people do well, and that's a really nice thing to see, and I appreciate that about you. I just wanted to say that.
Well, I appreciate it, Lars, but it's also good business. I mean, no offense, but if I shit on someone coming up through the ranks, when they get to where they're going, they're going to shit on me.
Yeah,
you got to treat people's
karma. It goes around. Comes around, goes around.
We did a bunch of years ago in Santa Cruz. I was promoting concerts in Santa Cruz. We did Billy Ocean.
Oh yeah.
We did it when he had come out with Caribbean Queen, and Loverboy hadn't hit yet. Yeah. So
This is a big thing.
he was the janitor in the studio. And I wonder how many engineers treated him poorly and were wishing they hadn't treated him poorly. Because all of a sudden he's a platinum artist.
KC, same thing.
Yeah,
Capitol
yeah.
Records. He was a floor sweeper at Capitol, I understand. Same thing. You never know. That's the thing.
No.
You never know. Just be
Never
nice
know.
to everybody. There's a thought.
100%. What a concept, Lars. Be nice to everybody. What a concept.
Cheers. Oh man.
So guys, you want stories, or I can give you a bunch of stories?
Yeah, we want the good, the bad, and the ugly is what we want.
One of my favorite actually is I did Tony Bennett at the Performing Arts Center a bunch of years ago, and I was standing stage right in the wings. And when he got done with his performance, he came over and shook my hand and thanked me.
Oh, nice.
No band ever does that. No band ever does that. And afterwards, my father-in-law, who has since passed, was of the World War II era too. And I brought him up. It wasn't a meet and greet. It was my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and Tony. And they put their arms on each other's shoulders and just hung out talking backstage for half hour.
Oh,
yeah, that's great.
And they weren't talking music or stardom. They were talking World War II and, you know, the whatever things that Tony was doing during the war. I did one I did a guy named Jason Mraz at the Performing Arts Center. And I got a call from a DJ friend of mine that was doing a class at Cal Poly, a choral class. And they were doing Jason Mraz tunes. And he said, "Can you hook me up with Jason Mraz?" And I said, "No, but I'll introduce you to the manager." Knowing that the manager, I sent an email to the manager, knowing that the manager would just delete it and forget about it. Day of show, I got a note that the whole choral group was invited backstage. So I brought them all backstage. They were hanging with Jason Mraz, and Jason Mraz went out and he did, you know, a set or half a set or whatever. And then he called them out and they did 3 songs on stage with Jason Mraz.
Oh, nice.
That's great. That's great.
That is friggin' amazing.
That is an amazing story. Yeah.
So Bruce, I've seen you speak in front of bands and musicians before. I was one of them in a crowd once at an event. And I got to say, I felt that was, even though I've toured and all that, but the information was for all levels. I felt it was really helpful. So I'm going to ask you this right now, kind of put you on the spot.
Please.
Where do you see, what can musicians do on their side to better work with promoters like you to help them? Did
you, at MusicCon that you're talking about, Lars, did you hear Bruce Floor talk?
I did. Yes.
I was talking to Royce earlier about him. So this was a kid that was a student at KCPR. And I worked with him because I was doing shows at the Rec Center. Well, he now is one of the most powerful managers in the world. He built the Slow Hotel, Hotel Slow. He's the lead pony on that. It's the biggest hotel in San Luis Obispo. Wow. He's done really good. And his message was, first of all, if you're a band, you have to think about the promoter. And that means if you're playing a bar, it's butts and seats. So what you have to do is you get together with the other bands and you say, "Hey, Lars, my band is playing Friday night. You get your posse to come to see my show. You're playing Saturday. I'll get my posse to come to see your show." So all of a sudden the bars, when Lars is playing with his band, the bar is double what it was last Saturday.
Yeah.
The bar will have you back when that happens. And when you're a local promoter and you hear that there's this band that's getting this draw all the time, maybe they're playing the Siren, but every time they play the Siren, it sells out, you know, so I'm going to start paying attention. Wow, that might be a good band to open up you know, for BB King or whatever that I'm doing at AVILA. So what Bruce is saying is join with your friends that are musicians. Bruce's, one of his comments was, he said, how many people in the audience are in bands? Everybody raised their hand. He said, how many people have t-shirts for their bands? And everybody raised their hand. He said, how many people join with the other bands? So instead of buying 3 dozen t-shirts, you can go and buy 260 t-shirts, and instead of paying $8 each, you can get them for $3 each. So the cooperation of bands and musicians. And do you know, I was telling Royce, do you know Saucepot, Lars?
Oh, the studio. Yes. I've been there. A great place. I've actually been into the whole room off of, what is it off of?
Tank Farm.
Yes. Not too far from Kramer Events. I used to work with those guys too.
My son works at Saucepot sometimes. He's a volunteer. But
yes,
the local musicians need to hook up with the other local musicians, need to hook up with the studios, need to hook up with the people that are doing the podcasts, and need to hook up with you should get to know Glenn Starkey, who writes the ad in New Times. You should get, you know, everybody needs to be connected because you're more powerful connected. Our area should be a mecca for music as much as Austin, as much as Nashville. There's no reason we should not be a mecca for music, but it's got to be led by the musicians. Musicians have to be the lead.
It's true. I well said, Bruce. Well,
look at the location, 400 miles from, like you said earlier, LA to San Francisco, 400 miles apart. It's a perfect day trip. Come down, put a show on, spend the night, and go home. And it's just beautiful here too. You know, the beaches.
And so if you're, let's say you're doing a recording, you go to Saucepot, you have a band in LA, you put them, you can get a room for $125 a night that you can't do in LA. Yep. You get them away from their friends and the drugs and the alcohol where their friends are. So maybe they could actually do a recording session. maybe you hook them up with something at the Siren. Maybe you hook them up as an opening act at the Fremont Theater. If the bands could, that's what Paul is trying to do with MusicOn. If the bands could come together, the promoters will follow. Because people don't come to see Bruce Howard. They don't give a shit about Bruce Howard. They come to see you.
Right. No,
you're the power.
One of the things we used to do, I used to work at Westlake Studios, and when I was doing the shows down there, the beauty about where you're located, and for a lot of musicians that are possibly going to listen to this after this cast, we get a lot of after viewers, I notice.
Yeah.
And if you're in San Francisco or if you're in LA, that's a lot of gas. You need to stop. And the way we used to strategize when we would tour the Midwest, the beauty of Chicago, Kansas, Illinois, St. Louis, they're fairly close together, large cities, but California's not that way.
It's spread out.
So San Luis Obispo, Morro Bay, Cayucas, and then of course the whole Paso Robles is a great place for these bands to get that pit stop on a halfway point, book a gig, promote it well, and you're going to have a cross-reference point for your shows. It's a fantastic place, and the studios are great. Like you said, I've been to Sauce, and I've also, Monterey's got a great one too. Wave Street, Monterey, I love those guys too. There are these great studios hidden in there, and the talent in that area, I got to tell you, you better have a good EPK. You're not just going to walk in and ask for a gig. You're up against some good comp, just like LA and San Fran. So have your shit together and have a good EPK. People don't know what it is. It's an electronic promotional kit. Guys like Bruce want to see that. They want to see your numbers. They want to hear your music a little bit. But more importantly, they want to know if you can sell tickets, as you said earlier. People didn't hear you say that before we got on, Bruce.
Right.
You got to sell tickets.
Well, and plus, you know, most of what I do, you know, my favorite music, remember I'm the guy that studied with Jim Chapin. My favorite music is Latin jazz. No. But I don't do Latin jazz because it doesn't sell tickets.
Right.
So right now, country is selling tickets. Reggae is selling tickets. You know, I don't put my personal take. I go to what the people want. So if I see a band, if it's a metal band or it's a, you know, Dixieland band, I don't give a shit. If I see a band that's doing well, my job, I don't judge anything. My job is to put something together that people want to see.
How are you figuring that out, Bruce? I mean, how do you know? Do you got somebody scouting for you? How do you know when a band's a good band to bring in? How are you doing that?
That's a very good question, because it used to be by radio spins and by record sales.
Yeah, no more.
Now, I still talk to Frank and Mike at Boo Boo's, and they'll, or Malik. I'll ask, or Ryan. I'll ask them, if there's a buzz out about it. But mostly what I do, because I'm 70, so mostly what I do is I hook up with, one of my partners, Dan Sheehan, has a event called Cali Roots.
Oh,
he's the largest reggae promoter in the U.S. now. So
Wow.
Dan is plugged into a genre of music that I'm not. We started a new business called Country Roots. So one of my friends works with I don't know if you guys ever knew Taylor Stevens. Taylor had Collective Efforts. He did EDM. That's how we got all the EDM stuff. I didn't know when we did LMFAO at AVILA probably 10 years ago. I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know what LMFAO did. And he told me it was EDM. It's a text for laugh my fucking ass off. But I didn't know that.
Actually, I do know that.
I didn't know that. I didn't know what
different.
I didn't know what EDM was. So for me, what I have to do is I have to seek out people, because music is driven by passion. A promoter, by definition, is not doing it for passion, it's for business. Yeah. So it's the same thing when I had Otter. I had to hook up with people because I let the DJs play whatever they wanted. So I had to hook up with people that were passionate. And I had to recognize that they were passionate, and then I had to stay out of their way.
Nice answer. Nice answer.
And that's what I do as a promoter.
Yeah. Wow.
Good.
So
You answered my question. So I'm going to give the floor over. I've been hogging the floor.
Dan, have you got any questions for Bruce right now?
Well, I know Bruce has been putting on shows, for profit. Have you ever done a charity event? And how do you handle the difference between charity and, profit?
Nice.
Huge. So one of my pet peeves, thank you for one of my pet peeves. So when we started the Avila Beach Blues Festival, it was attached to the beer festival. Beer festival was on Saturday. My blues festival was on Sunday. Beer festival was a benefit for hospice, which if you haven't used hospice, I'm sorry to say you probably will in your lifetime.
Yeah,
and
someone eventually will die.
And mine was for profit. And I wanted to make sure that people knew my show was a for-profit show. I don't want to bullshit people. Now we have every show I do, there's a charitable component. I give a portion of every show. For George Thorogood, it's for leukemia. No, it's for Leukemia and Lymphoma Foundation. Every show I do. But we do straight ahead benefits. Like I said, my first show in San Luis Obispo was a benefit, 100% benefit for African famine relief.
Oh, right on.
So every show I do has a component, has a nonprofit component, but some shows are completely nonprofit. The problem with a complete nonprofit show is, what do you do if it loses money?
Yeah.
And most people, no offense, but people come to shows for the music. And if it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, I don't think people really care. They go because they want to see Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Because the events I put on, all the events that I put on over the past 12, 13 years, 14 years, was for charity. It's Ride for Dime. After Dimebag Darrell was killed, I formed the Ride for Dime organization. And the first couple of years lost money. When I say lost money, it was out of my pocket. I lost what I had. I say I invested in. I invested $11,000, and I eventually got some of that back. But it was tough bringing in the money, and there was no support. It seemed like everybody wanted to help, but it ended up falling all on my shoulders. But I carried through, and over the years, we became profitable for the charity. We ended up raising lots of money for the charity. So actually, it was kind of easy for me getting bands. My rule was I don't pay the bands. If you're doing this out of respect for Dimebag Darrell and he influenced you, you'll pay your respect by playing for free. even with that, I had bands all over the country wanting to play the event. Even I even had a band come all the way from Turkey on their dollar,
Wow.
and perform. But in the long run, it helped them. You're talking about doing like tours in California. Texas is easy. It's like a big circle from Dallas down to San Antonio and Austin, Houston, Corpus Christi. You could make a big circle. Well, this band came all the way from Turkey.
Wow.
Played at my event, and they were really, really good. And the word spread within a couple of days. And they ended up doing a Texas tour. And then when they left Texas, they went back to Turkey, and they had this history behind them from Texas, and they're huge in Turkey now. And I go, and it didn't cost me a penny. Now, they had to deal with visas, passports, inoculations, sponsorships. And I said, if you can get here, you can play. And they did it. And I go, oh my God. So some bands are really, like, talking about passion. All the bands that I hired to do the gig, they were very, very passionate. To do everything. And I had an all-female heavy metal band out of Ohio came down here. A band out of Philadelphia came to Dallas. And it didn't cost me anything. So to me, it was easier that way because financially, I didn't have any output, and everybody that did anything to the charity event was doing it on their own, for free. Right. And we got to gain all the profit from it that we eventually gave to charity. But it took us, our third year, we finally had enough money to give to charity. First 2 years, I supported it myself.
Well, and what I told you about the Twinkle Brothers for the African relief, famine relief, what I didn't know, because I forgot what we did. It was like, we did it in the Spirit, and it was like $5 of every ticket, or whatever the number was, $10 of every ticket. I don't remember what it was because it was 35 years ago. But the show lost money. And I found out that I still had to go out of pocket for that $5 because the people that bought a ticket were expecting even though the show overall lost money, I had to come more out of pocket because I had promised those people that bought a ticket that $10 of every one of their tickets was going to go. So I had to fulfill legally fulfill my promise, or they could have sued me. And they didn't, nobody knew that. But so I lost money on the show, and I had to go out of pocket to do the contribution. But that's what you got to do.
Well,
you can't. Go ahead. Go ahead. No,
Bruce. No, Bruce, you weren't done. Please.
Well, I have yours is related, Lars. I have another story, but you go first.
I'm just gonna do a short tag in. I've got to do the musician side on this because I've been involved in a lot of the such organization, like when we did the world record in Portugal, the money went to help the displaced kids, find homes. When I did the first world record back in 2010 for marathon drumming, that went to kids with instruments. Here's what I learned about that on the musician side that I just want to say out to the musicians. First off, a nonprofit doesn't have to mean nonprofit. And the second thing I'm going to say is the difference between you and another band that will get you ahead sometimes is that you have a story. And you can be the best band, and there's always going to be a better band. But when you got a story, here's what I learned. People care that you care. And the next thing you know, you get PSAs. Those are free. That means every time on the news, on rotation, on television and radio, they're talking about your band and the promoter for nothing. It's thousands of dollars of free ads. I'm giving away some of my secrets right now.
It's true. You're right.
It's true. Now, you can still make money on this because remember, both the promoter is going to be selling product at that venue just like we are. We fill that place and we rock it for the veterans, for kids, for seniors. Now, I may sound like I'm being selfish right now, but here's the deal. No, I'm not. I actually do care about seniors and kids and stuff, but I'm tagging it on to what I believe in. And so you can do something positive with your music. Don't be selfish. Just think about yourself. And if you work it out right, nobody loses money. But you do have to think it through. You do got to work it. When you got guys like Dan coming after you, and he's got an idea, and Dan come to me and say, hey, man, I want to make some money for these people. You need to step up and make sure you help them make money, bands. Bruce, he asked you to do an event for veterans. You need to step up and help them make money. Don't just show up like a diva and be like, I'm here. That's the problem with the band. You got to get involved, get on the radio, talk about it, thank your promoters, get them included. That's how it works. I just had to get that in there real quick.
I agree. And I feel like I think you said it, Lars. People, you know, my buddy that does Cali Roots, his show is Memorial Day weekend also, and he does 15,000 people a day for 4 days. So he does 60,000 people there. He has armies of people not only asking for but expecting free tickets.
Oh, that's
and it's like but I'm like, you say you support the music,
yeah.
but if you support the music, how do you think the band is eating tonight?
Yeah.
I mean,
cheese right now.
it's too often that people feel like because music is an art form that it's okay to ask a musician to, and I think nonprofits are a different thing. Don't get me wrong. I think it's good to do nonprofit stuff.
Put me on the list. Put me on the list. Will you, Lou? Put me on the list. Like,
I heard that a lot.
Yeah.
We all do. And it's like, I mean, excuse this expression, but support the fucking music.
Yes.
You know, put your money where your mouth is. You say you're
don't
really
go to a restaurant.
Absolutely.
Say, hey, are you paying for my dinner? That was great.
Correct.
Right?
I used to tell people, look, it's a charity event, not a charity for you.
Correct.
You know?
Yes.
What have we done? You know,
okay,
Now,
story.
Now, Bruce,
story.
I don't care what industry you're in. There's going to be some nightmare scenarios. You mind sharing a couple of nightmares?
I do, but one thing I want to say before, because I teach once a year or once a semester, I go in and talk to the kids at Cal Poly that are doing live events. And I tell them a couple of things that are important in this business. One, to me, and this is in any business, but people don't understand it in the music business. Your ethics are hugely important in this business. Who you are and your word and how you live your life is really important in this business. People think of rock and roll and, you know, drugs in the back room and stuff. Your ethics is of huge importance, and your work ethic. You have to be willing to work. That idea that you're in the back and you're doing lines with the promoter and the bands and the roadies, and none of that shit's true. if you don't want to work and you don't have a good ethical background or soul, you ain't going to make it in this business.
Right. There's also people that get involved. A lot of people get involved like that too, where they want to do self-promotion.
Correct.
You know, and that was one of my rules. If I see any self-promotion, you're gone.
Yeah.
And I had to kick a few people out because suddenly it was all about them. They're in the spotlight, and and I don't know. I said, I'm not going to have any of that.
Oh, dude, we could share stories. So my story, one of my early shows, I used to do shows at the Coconut Grove Ballroom in Santa Cruz. So in the old days, like for the old guys on this call, like our grandparents' days, there was a suntan special that went up the coast, a train, and there was a series of wooden ballrooms, and bands like Basie would stop and they would play, Long Beach and Catalina Island, and they'd go up the coast on a train and they'd hit all these old ballrooms. Well, at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk is the Coconut Grove Ballroom. I told you my first show was at the Coconut Grove Sunroom with the glass ceiling and all that. So I did a Soul to Soul series. We had Al Green, Billy Ocean, James Brown, and someone else. I forgot. We called it the Soul to Soul series. James Brown had Mary Wells open, which for the youngsters on this call, they might not know who Mary Wells did, but she did My Guy, which made Motown follow up with My Girl, which My Girl was the hit. Anyway,
Temptations.
So we did two shows, which meant Mary Wells, James Brown, Clear the House, bring in 1,000 more people, Mary Wells, James Brown. Well, my partner at the time, again, this is 35 years ago, called me because James Brown was pissed off in between shows, not sets, in between shows. So I went back. Coconut Grove Ballroom had a really small dressing room for the artist. And James Brown was in his tighty whities, and he had his hair in curlers, and he had the old-fashioned hair dryer that used to come down like you see in the 50s movies. Yeah, and realize I'm scared shitless. This is James Brown. And he thought that we were filming him in order to bootleg a video because he saw something and he thought we were filming it. And he said that I had to pay him more money or he wasn't going to come out for the second show. And realized like I couldn't talk. I was so scared. But I knew if I didn't stand up for myself, I needed to find a new business. He got his wife.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say, how did you handle that? You said you knew you had to stand up for yourself.
He got his wife, and he said, "Baby, get my wallet." She said, "No, James." He said, "Baby, get my wallet." Realized he's in his tidy whities, and this is James Brown, and I can't breathe because I'm so scared. I thought he was going to get his union card because he gets a different. He got out his Republican National Convention card and said, "I'm personal friends with the president. Do not make me wake the president. I will call the president of the United States."
Wow.
Gotta be kidding me.
Wow.
Yeah. What I ended up doing was I got his lighting guy because it was second-story lighting, on a balcony. And his lighting guy came down finally and said, "I saw that camera. That was a local press camera. It was a still camera, but it was big, still camera." And he went on about 2:45 in the morning. One of the Santa Cruz cops came up and said, "Are you the promoter?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You have to get him off the stage." Because we had collected all the alcohol at 2:00 because you can't serve alcohol after 2. And I said, "Excuse me, officer, that's James Brown. You get him off the stage. I'm not going up there." And after the show, he came and hugged me and told me it was the best show he'd ever done. And thanked me for it.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. What a story.
That's my James Brown story. And he's still the godfather of soul, hardest working man in show business. He's the guy. I still respect him. All of the hip hop that we were talking about, Royce, started with James Brown.
Started with James. He is the godfather. Yeah.
He's the dude. And
There'd be
still,
no Michael Jackson. There'd be no Prince without James.
1,000%. That's the lineage. You
Come
just
on.
named the lineage, man.
Yeah.
It was Michael and then Prince. That's what followed James Brown.
Those dancing moves, the style. Yeah.
100, the activity on stage. So have you guys heard of the Tony Awards? I think, Tammy Awards.
Not the Tammy.
No, not the Tammy.
Tammys. It's what Teenage Music International or something.
Really?
Where,
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
oh, you got it. It's on Netflix. It was.
No, yeah, I got that. Yeah.
It was like Dick Clark.
Right.
Oh, I remember Dick Clark. Yeah.
So the band that was next to it was like all Leslie Gore and the Beach Boys, and the band before the closing band was the closing band ended up being the Stones, and James Brown wanted to close, but he had to go before the Stones, and James Brown came out and just friggin' lit the place on fire with his dance moves. And there is a rumor that Mix Moves
came from that.
Started that night.
No kidding.
That
makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah,
I heard James Brown in a couple of different interviews. He was being interviewed, and twice I heard him say, I can't sing. I can dance, but I can't sing. You know? He was kind of humble about his singing. I thought he sang great myself.
He could, we did Kris Kristofferson a couple of years ago at the Fremont, and I tell people he can't sing and he can't play guitar, and there was not a dry eye in the audience. He blew every single person away.
We were talking about how Neil Young today would lose or not even get past the preliminaries on The Voice or American Idol.
100%.
His genetics, like a Bob Dylan, are so powerful, he's in the Hall of Fame.
100%.
You can skip all that shit.
100%.
You got it, man. You got it.
Exactly
100%.
right.
But you know what? Speaking of James Brown or getting those moves, or Mick Jagger from that, I understood that Pete Townsend developed that whole arm thing because he had to play along with Jimi Hendrix on that one particular show.
Wow.
And he knew Hendrix was coming, so he came up with that show. So sometimes I guess what that says about that, and I do believe that's documented, you can be inspired by other bands you know, to raise your level. And that's the thing we need to look at is you don't need to compete, be inspired. Instead, raise your level instead of trying to compete with another. Forget battle the bands. Try to say, what can I do to be as good as that guy? And then, or even better. That's what we need to do. And that was a perfect example of that.
Well, and I think music is like a stream of humankind. So people that say their music is unique to no, it's always, I mean, where did it all came from Africa, right?
One way or the other.
It moved into, it moved into Europe. It moved into North America. There ain't nothing wrong with that. You know, that's our culture. That's what we came from.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, to be inspired is to actually be aware.
Correct.
And I think that's a big thing. So it's not something to be ashamed of. When somebody says, I used to get ashamed when I was younger, when somebody said I looked like Ringo when I played, or I sounded like Keith, I got upset. Because when you're younger, you think, no, I'm an original. Nobody's like me, you know. You don't realize what a compliment you just received.
100%.
So what you should do, you young musicians out there, if somebody ever says you sound like that, instead of declining it or disputing it, say thank you. Right. And then figure out how to make it your own. I learned a lot from that Ray Charles movie when they were talking about Ray Charles. And the guy said, I hear you, but what's your voice? That's the next step. Make it your... Don't
100%.
Exactly.
And plus, when somebody comes up and tells you that you sound like somebody, it's because they love that person.
They like you.
Yes, that means they like you.
It's meant to be a compliment, right?
There you go.
You're talking
compared me to the Beatles drummer.
Those were fighting words for Lou.
They were. I hated that. Keith Moon, I'm better than him.
How dare you?
We know everything in our 20s. All right, come on.
Right.
You know, talk about somebody sounding like somebody else because they were inspired or influenced by him. That's kind of a big deal right now. I mean, I don't know about nationally, but here locally, everybody's a tribute band now. Everybody wants to sound like somebody now.
It's huge, the tribute bands right now.
Listen up on that one. Let me listen up on that.
I saw a Brick in the Wall the other night, a Pink Floyd tribute, and they were excellent. I mean, it's like you're listening to Pink Floyd. You know, to me, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I think it's great that to me, it's cheaper than seeing the original thing. It's like seeing a knockoff.
So
see, the Chili Pepper tribute band was touring at the same time as the Chili Peppers.
Oh,
that would upset me.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you know what, guys, at least wait till we're done because you're pulling off my ticket sales. Mm-hmm. It is a business, and I feel there's a level of respect. First off, I would be I'd feel it's admirable that you're copying me so well, but I'd also be concerned about what you just said on that line. You know, where hey, it was cheaper then. I don't want that. So
I think music's about an art. So I had a buddy, and Lars, you might know. Have you ever heard of Emil Richards?
No, I haven't.
Emil Richards was the #1 studio call guy for percussion. He was Sinatra's percussionist, did the Academy Awards, major movie guy. He was a guy that kind of helped me out in the beginning. He's gone now, but I was talking to him a million years ago, and he was doing a gig because he did like the world tour with Sinatra and stuff. He was playing with Sean. He was playing with Sean Cassidy. And I was like, and I was like, ooh, dude.
I love you.
But you know what he said to me? Emil said, who are you to put down Sean Cassidy? He said, he's got millions of fans. This is an art form. Leave him alone. Who are you to put? And I think that's true. Look at the musical forms, man. You can't put if people want to go hear a tribute band and the lead singer with Journey is from a tribute band.
Yeah, that's right.
It's true. Here's what I'll say on that. Yeah, I mean, I get people ask me all the time. They see me in a room and a band's playing. I get the classic guy, what do you think of the drummer? What do you think of the guitarist? And my answer to nowadays is they're on stage and I'm not.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
They're on stage.
That's a good point.
So right now they are winning no matter what. And I'm here, by the way.
They're on top.
Watching them. You're talking to me because I'm here watching them. So that should be your answer. There's
100%.
Right?
100%.
I paid to get in just like you. You know, well, maybe sometimes I get a pass, but even still, I showed up. So
Yeah,
I agree with you on that.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, we've got a local band here in Dallas, the AC/DC tribute band called Back in Black. And the lead singer is unbelievable. This guy sounds like Bon Scott. He sounds like Brian Johnson. And when Brian Johnson's about to hang it up, well, AC/DC was going to be without a singer. So that they called for this guy. I forgot what his name is, but they wanted to interview him. He jammed with AC/DC for 5 hours, and they loved him. And he said, after 2 hours, he thought, well, I'm using up, their time. And hey, it was nice guys. And they go, hey, come on, let's keep jamming. He was surprised that he jammed 3 more hours with these guys.
Oh, man.
But I tell you what, their set is unbelievable. You probably saw one of the videos I shot a few weeks ago, but you'd think you're watching AC/DC. I enjoyed that concert as much as I probably would see an AC/DC.
Because you did that, I got to plug the Boys in Slow, where Bruce is from. High Voltage, also an AC/DC band. Kelly Atwell.
Kelly Atwell, right?
Great singer. I've been in the studio with him before. Who also performed with one of the bands where I'm friends with, Montrose, back when Sammy was still alive in San Luis, not San Luis, Morro Bay. I believe it was a Morro Bay Festival.
Do you remember Kelly Atwell and his brother Dag and DVS?
Was that the guy with the long black? I don't know if I was in Slow yet.
I go back that far with watching him, but yeah, he's a good guy. We saw a good tribute band it's been a long time, but it was in San Luis Obispo, up at, I think you mentioned the club up where KSBY is now.
The Spirit.
And it was a Doors impersonator called Wild Child. And they were recently in town performing again, but I didn't go see them this time, but I don't even know if it was the same people in it. But back then, I mean, they were really good. And the guy
it's entertainment. When my wife and I watch TV, I'll go and watch the Science Channel in one room, and she's watching Hallmark in the other room. She's not wrong, and I'm not wrong. It's entertainment. It's entertainment. It's what you do. And I can't condemn if my son is way into hip hop. I'm not a big country fan. I'm a rock and roll guy. So, but I don't put down country people. I don't put down hip hop people. We did, it's entertainment. You go to where your passion. It's about passion. Mm-hmm. And we all can't be passionate about the same thing.
My whole family went through a country phase, but and we still like country, but we came back to our rock roots after a couple of years,
Yeah.
I think live music, as long as it is live and keeping people coming back out, no matter what it is a good thing.
100%.
I'm going to add my caveat to this one more time, though. What I'm pushing on is that if we don't keep supporting original music, these cover bands will have nothing to cover in 30 years. So we need to make sure that we support and don't stop going out to watch these new guys. Don't be the guy that goes, there's no good new music, not since Leonard Skinner. There is. You have stopped looking. You have stopped listening. Change your haircut like I did and go out and go listen to some
1,000. So do you guys know who Jim Ladd is? have you ever heard of Jim Ladd?
Jim Ladd? I haven't, no.
Jim Ladd is like the most famous DJ out of LA.
Okay.
And he's on satellite radio now. He wrote a book called Radio Waves, and he said all good music stopped at the end of the 70s. He's wrong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's wrong.
That's like saying all good athletes stopped at the 70s.
Correct.
They keep getting better. It's the opposite.
100%. He's wrong.
On the subject of DJs, in a little town in Henderson, Nevada, just outside of Vegas, where I grew up, we had Wolfman Jack came to town.
Oh yeah.
When I was about a freshman in high school, and we walked down Water Street and stopped in front of his studio, where it was just a plate glass window and him in there on a microphone, and once in a while
Wolfman.
Once in a while, he'd call us back in to talk to him a little bit and stuff. And then later on, got to be a little older teenagers. We'd sit out in the desert in our cars with the stereos playing, getting high. And we could tune him in from Tijuana, where they had more power. They were belting him, all the way across the United States.
The Big X over Los Angeles.
Big X, yeah. I heard it on the X.
Yeah.
When I sailed across the Pacific when I was a kid in a little 42-foot yacht, and we would do little fixing. It's not a great navigational tool, but you point in the direction of a radio station, and you get a sense of whether you're fucked or not. and we would go off of the Big X out of Los Angeles because we knew that was coming out of Tijuana.
Right. I mean, that was coming out with some real power, you know. Way too much to be legal here. That's why he was down there. You know?
It was absolutely illegal in the United States.
Yeah,
That's true.
I heard stories that people would open up their ovens and hear the X. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. You guys are killing me, man. My face is
This is really cool, Royce. This is good to bring these guys together. I'm honored to be able to spend time with you guys.
No, I'm honored to have you here, and all my friends were all honored, and every one of them I'm honored to have on, to be honest with you. But man, Bruce, you just hitting it out of the park tonight. Really appreciate you being here. I'd like to have you back.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. And Dan, if you're ever on the coast, give me a shout, dude. And Lars, I'll meet you at MusicCon.
I'll be there. I'll try to get back down there.
Me too. Paul Irving is a good buddy of mine. And I think what he's trying to do for local music is really powerful.
Oh, yeah, we know each other. I'll be down there in a couple of weeks, actually. So I'll try and stop in and say hello.
That'd be good, man. I appreciate it. Good talking to you guys. Thanks, Royce.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Good night, brother. Catch up again. All right. Well, I guess we're going to go ahead and sign off, folks. Thank you guys very much, and see you next week. And everybody in the chat, I just want to thank you guys for joining us and putting up with us. And hope to see you again next week, if not sooner. Thank you, everybody.